And welcome back to the Daily Dribble podcast, guys. As always, I'm your host, Nick Zammit, here back with another massive installment after a bumper week of NBA action once again. The news is coming thick and fast, both on and off the court. We're now getting a really good look at, the lay of the land. We're now a couple of weeks into the season. Teams are starting to find, where they sit in the hierarchy. And it's made for some compelling basketball thus far. So really looking forward to getting into the episode momentarily. Before we do so, though, a big shout out to both Stadium Scene and The Cover, both those networks continuing to showcase all of my work here at the Daily Dribble, as well as a whole host of other content creators in and around Australia, New Zealand, the US and Canada. Really appreciate all their continued hard work and support of me here. Likewise to all of you guys. Tuning into the episode week in and week out, whether that's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or watching on YouTube, as well as following all the socials, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok. Really appreciate all the continued support. Really does mean a lot. Okay, so for today's show, it is going to be the first part of a two-part series dubbed "'Tis the Season of Giving." Now, we're into the back end of November, rapidly approaching Christmas. Thought it was a great opportunity. Some teams have started well, some not so well, but each team deserves at least one nice thing said about them, I think. As I said, 'tis the season of giving. It feels like an appropriate time. I'm going to go through both conferences. Today, the Eastern Conference. Next week, the Western Conference. And just give at least one compliment to each team. Might be a small thing, it might be a big thing, but each team should have at least one thing to feel that their supporters hopeful about. But it'll make sense. It's not a hard concept, but I'm sure you'll get the gist of it. Would love for you guys to send through your compliments for your respective team. If you think I got something right, if I got it wrong, share your thoughts. Hit up the socials and pass on your good compliments. Okay, without further ado, let's get into things. I'm going to go through alphabetically, starting first and foremost with the Atlanta Hawks. My compliment to them is the fact that Dyson Daniels is thriving. Now, 21 years old, came across from the Pelicans in the offseason, is just flourishing in his new colours there in Atlanta at the moment. Averaging 15 points, 4.5 rebounds, 3 assists, and a league-leading 3.7 steals per game. Has settled in tremendously well and really helps provide some much-needed defense to this Hawks squad. With Trae Young, Jalen Johnson, Zachary Risache, Clint Capella, Daniels brings a little stability, real aggressiveness and dogged determination on the defensive end, which they were kind of lacking. I think he complements this squad really well, and despite them, I don't think they're probably a guaranteed playoff team, probably more in that play-in mix. He's adding some much-needed ticker and actually offensive firepower as well. A really, really quality signing, and I think probably one of the more underrated trade acquisitions in the offseason just gone by. So great to see another Aussie doing really well there. For the Boston Celtics, my compliment is the fact that they have enough depth in their big man stocks without Kristaps Porzingis. Now, there was a little bit of concern going into the season without KP that maybe they wouldn't have enough to kind of fill that big man role. But with Al Horford, Xavier Tillman, and Nemes Keita there, should I say, they're more than adequate to help keep things afloat till KP comes back. Really doesn't feel like they're a team that needs to get out of first gear at the moment. Currently sitting second in the Eastern Conference, trailing the Cavs. But they're not breaking to sweat the reigning champs. And if they can just get through this little period unscathed, once KP comes back, I think they're incredibly well poised to go back-to-back at the moment. So that's my compliment to them, to keeping their big man stocks handy when KP comes back. Take a little bit of the pressure off him as he integrates back in the team. If Tillman and Horford in particular keep playing minutes, will bode really well for them. For the Brooklyn Nets, a compliment for them is the fact that trade value is on the up for key pieces for them. So by that, I mean Cam Johnson, Cam Thomas, Dennis Schroeder. Players like that aren't doing their value any harm at the moment. The Nets are winning probably more games than anticipated. These three players in particular are playing really good basketball, and are boosting their value if a time comes where the Nets want to offload them and just really fully embrace that rebuild. If they don't decide to go that route, these three players and the rest of their squad, to be fair, are actually playing competitive basketball night in and night out at the moment. So I think that is a starting point, the fact that they're competitive. And then if they do look to offload these pieces, mid-season, they're doing nothing to hurt their value. As I said, Cam Johnson, Cam Thomas, and probably Dennis Schroeder, they're the big three at the moment. So playing really good basketball, points, stats on the board, their value is just continuing to go up and up and up, which is going to be very advantageous and help them certainly get better packages back if they do look to offload these players. For the Charlotte Hornets, big compliment, a big plus for them is the fact that you've found your backcourt of the future. Now, Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball, they are that pairing. They are exciting, they're young, they're dynamic. You just need to put a really competent team around them, I think. They're the kind of two headline acts. At the minute, you've got Bridges, you've got, Josh Green, you've got other little bits and pieces, smattering of players. I don't think that puts them in playoff contention. But the hardest part is getting your ball handlers, I think. Getting your stars. You've got that in Miller, you've got that in Ball. The big key piece, I think, is ensuring both of them stay healthy, LaMelo Ball in particular. But they've got a backcourt to build around now, and that's probably the best thing that can be said about them over the last few years. Their team, LaMelo outside of, that's kind of the piece they've looked to build around. But now that they've got that backcourt established, they can start building out from that. So I think it bodes really well. I don't think it's going to pay dividends at the moment for the Hornets. But over the next 2, 3, 4 years, if they can continue to build that roster and put, using that word again, competent players around them, I think it'll hold them in pretty good stead. For the Chicago Bulls, big positive, and a big positive for my fantasy team as well, Nikola Vucevic is absolutely balling. Now, he's playing like one of the best bigs in the league at the moment, without a doubt. He's averaging a tick under 21 points per game, 10 rebounds, 3 assists, and it's going at 48.5% from three. Now, the Bulls are another funny team sitting in that kind of mediocre phase. I tell you what, if they keep getting this level of production out of Vooch, I think they can be slightly damaging. With Zach LaVine coming back now, Kobe White, Pat Williams, Josh Giddey there, there's enough to like about this roster. I think their depth and bench is a little bit problematic, but that starting five is certainly serviceable. As I said, if you're getting this ball out of Vooch, he's arguably playing some of the best ball of his career at the moment. Don't be surprised to see them take some scalps, and they've certainly done that already. I think they should absolutely, at a minimum, be aiming playing. See if they can go much further, but very impressive start from him so far. Okay, let's go ahead to the Cleveland Cavaliers. They're positive. They're big. Positive has to be. I was trying to think of something a little bit different, but I couldn't go past the fact that they had a 15-game win streak to start the season. Not many teams in NBA history have been able to do what the Cavs did to start the season. And to be fair, only one team in NBA history, the 2015-2016 Warriors, have started the regular season better than what they did. They rattled off 24 wins in that 73-9 season, which was just absolutely ridiculous. But the Cavs rattling off 15 wins, simply incredible. They unfortunately went down to the Boston Celtics the other day, ended that streak. But what they've done now is they've set their season up for success. The rest of the league is now chasing them. I can't envision a world in which they, continue on this pace. I think they'll come back to earth a little bit. But regardless, as I said, they've put themselves in really good stead. They've got a bit of a jump now on, the Celtics are trailing, but the rest of the teams in the league, they've put a bit of a buffer between them now. So, as I said, their season is set up for success. I don't know how deep this team will go in the playoffs, but regardless, they should finish the regular season in pretty good standings, you would think. And, with the way it started, home court should be looking at a minimum there. So, really impressive start, a history kind of making start to the season for the Cavs, broken many of their own franchise records. And, yeah, I certainly didn't expect it, but a pleasant little surprise there if you're a Cleveland fan. Moving on to the Detroit Pistons, my compliment for them, they look much more stable this season. Now, with the signing of Tim Hardaway, Tobias Harris and co, they've added some much needed competency and experience with those young stars. Simone Fontecchio as well there. Alongside Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren, and the star pick in that, Cade Cunningham, they're actually playing some really good basketball. And again, another team at a minimum should be vying for playing. I personally think, and I went into the season higher than most others on the Pistons, I think they're a borderline playoff team. It's a long season. I think they've started really well. If they can ensure they stay healthy, I actually like their roster. I think Cade is an absolute stud. Having those guys that can get you a bucket in Hardaway and Harris, and the strides that Ivy has made as well. It's a really nice balance, a lot more stable. It's great to have a young, like we've seen it with the Rockets. It's great to have a young team with young stars, like in their case, Jalen Green, Alperen Sengun, Jabari Smith. You do need competent players and experienced players to help nurture those younger ones. Like we've seen it there with Dylan Brooks, Fred VanVleet. Detroit now have that in Hardaway and Harris. So really liking their roster. Excited to see what they can do this season. I'm certainly rooting for them. It's been a long time since Detroit were relevant, but hopefully things are on the up there. For the Indiana Pacers, my compliment is got to be the fact that Benedict Mathurin looks hungry. Now, despite many Pacers players being injured or playing poorly for that matter, Mathurin stepped up big time and is playing a big part on this roster at the moment. He's averaging a tick under 20 points, nearly 7 rebounds, going at 46.5% from three. That's a really solid start to the season. And, he looks intent on taking his game to the next level. And from what I've seen from the Pacers so far, I think that's what they need to be a legitimate threat. I haven't been inspired by what I've seen from them thus far. Turner, Siakam, Halliburton, them as a collective, that kind of big three, hasn't instilled a lot of faith in me. But if Mathurin, Nembhard, Naismith, players like that can start elevating their game, they might just find themselves back in that probably second to third tier of the East. At the moment, I'm not sold on them at all. Disappointing given I went in with pretty high expectations with the way they ended last season. But I think, Mathurin will be a big cog in their push for the playoffs. For Miami, you've got the second best defense in the league. Now, they sit only behind Orlando on that front, giving up 110.1 points per game. I still personally think they're shaky on the offensive end, but with that level of D, they're giving themselves at least a chance to win games. Pardon me. Tyler Hero, Bam, Jimmy, their whole roster, it's not consistent. And that's the problem at the moment. Some nights you're getting Hero go bananas. Jimmy's had a couple of games here and there. Bam's probably the most consistent of all of them. I don't think I believe in them that much. But in this day and age where teams want to run, gun, put up threes, put up as many points as possible, it's nice to see Miami still playing D and kind of hinging a lot of their results on that. They're having to grind out wins at the moment. I think that's probably their best hope because I personally don't think they've got enough firepower to put up 130 points per night. So hinge your hat on that, the defensive end. I think really hone in and kind of make that your bread and butter. That being said, I just don't know how far this team will go this year. I don't know. They've been a team that's been able to kind of almost coast through the regular season, then dial it up in the playoffs. I just don't know if they've got that ability this season. Pushing ahead to Milwaukee. My compliment, despite a slow start to the season, they're starting to get things on track a little bit now. It's the fact that Giannis and Dame have been elite. Now, we saw a pretty lackluster first season in Milwaukee last season from Dame. He's picked it up incredibly well this season, dropping 25.5 points, 4.5 rebounds, and 7 assists, whilst Giannis has been going at 31.5 points, 12.5 rebounds, and 6 assists. MVP level numbers there from him. Unfortunately, the results aren't on the board, so he probably hasn't been getting as much credit as he deserves. Yeah, they just need other players, the role players, to come with them. Spoke a couple of weeks ago about the need for Brook Lopez to pick up his game. I think he's since done that a little bit. Torian Prince, players like that, they need these other members to step up. News came out just the other day that Chris Middleton is officially cleared to play. He's ramping up a return to court. I think they desperately need him back. They need a third star, a third guy who can handle the rock, who can score a bucket, and who can take control. Because at the minute, unless you're getting superhuman performances from both Dame and Giannis, the wins are hard to come by. So, been a fantastic start for both of them. Looking forward to seeing Middleton back, and looking forward to seeing how good this team can be. I still have a faith in them, but I think a lot hinges on how Middleton looks. Heading to New York for the Knicks. Things are officially starting to click. Now, that is a compliment. Things are starting to click. It was also always going to take a little bit of time to integrate Cat into this roster. They moved on from DiVincenzo. They moved on from Randall. They acquired the big-name star in Cat. It was a pretty slow start. I think it's now taking shape. They're getting wins on the board. They're playing more cohesively. I think Brunson now is kind of, again, it looked like he was not hesitant. He was trying to get everyone involved. It looks like he's kind of put the foot down and says, hey, I'm the number one guy. This team's going to go as far as I take them. And Cat's kind of slipping in behind perfectly in that number 2 role. That's when New York are going to look their best. Very interested to see what route they go when Mitchell Robinson comes back and is fit and healthy. Will they continue with Cat at the 5? Or will they play him as a 4, get Robinson in the starting 5? I personally quite like this starting 5 that they've currently got there with Anunoby, Hart, Bridges, Brunson, and Cat. But time will tell how that plays out. That being said, very, very dangerous now that they're starting to get things on the right track. They're looking like the team we thought they would be heading into the season. Pardon me. For Orlando, my compliment has to be the fact that they've kept things afloat without their best player. After a ripping start to Paolo Banchero there, like across the first week or two, MVP level performances, I thought once he went down, they would struggle. This hasn't been the case at all. Franz Wagner, Jalen Suggs, Tristan Silva, names like that have stepped up big time. And again, they're a team that's kind of setting their season up for success. I think they've kept things afloat. If memory serves correctly, I think they're currently third or fourth in the Eastern Conference at the moment. They're in great shape for when Banchero comes back, which is hopefully sooner rather than later. But yeah, fantastic job. Fantastic job from the whole squad to keep things afloat. It's been a real, like Wagner's probably been the key, especially on the offensive end, Suggs as well. But the whole roster has really stepped up its game, and hopefully we see this level of production as well once Banchero slots back into the fold. For Philly, it's kind of almost 2 compliments here. One is kind of a backhanded compliment. It can't get much worse. It has been an absolutely criminal start to the season. No thanks to injuries, but yeah, it really can't get much worse for them. And I guess the second side is that we haven't really got to see this big 3 on the court together for an extended period of time. Now, heading into the season, once they made that move for Paul George, like that idea in my head of PG, Maxey, and Embiid, it sounds fantastic. You've got the explosive young guard who's really made strides in his game. You've got the MVP level big man who's one of the most dominant forces in the NBA. And then you've got that go bucket scorer, wing scorer in Paul George there. Like on paper, it sounds perfect. Unfortunately, we just haven't got to see it enough. I think they played their first game together the other day in their loss to the Memphis Grizzlies. We only saw short periods from PG, reduced minutes from Maxi there. So I'm not really counting that too much of a sample size. But if they can get it to click, I think it'll be quite damaging. Unfortunately, they've got a very, very long road ahead of them to actually even make the plane. But if this big three can click, there's still a feasible hope that they can get this season back on track. 2 teams to go, guys. I had the Toronto Raptors. My compliment for them is their young core is building nicely. Now, with RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickly, kind of Scotty Barnes being the chief there, and Grady Dick taking a big step up, that's a really solid young core that they're building. They need a little bit more competency in depth. I think Jakob Poeltl there as a big man's playing fantastic basketball. If they can just refine their depth, if all these young players can take that little strides in their development, that's a really nice core to build around. And despite, their record at the moment looking pretty lackluster, they've had some really great games, showed some really exciting moments. Unfortunately, as I said, their record's probably not indicative of how they've played. But I think if you're a Raptors fan, you'd be really buoyed by what you've seen there. As I said, Barrett, Quickly, Barnes, and Dick, that's your core of the future now. So, yeah, really excited to see how they progress throughout the course of the season. Last and certainly not least, the Washington Wizards. This one was probably the hardest to come to. I kind of toed and froed with what I was going to go with, and it wasn't easy. It's been a very ordinary start to the season for the Wizards. But my compliment for them is Bub Carrington looks like he's going to be a serious player. Now, all the talk was around the number 2 pick, Alex Sarr. He's been pretty hit and miss to start the season. From watching him with the Perth Wildcats and what I've seen so far, I think he'll grow into the league. I think he's going to be a little bit more of a slow burn, whilst Bub looks built for it already. Averaging 10.5 points, 4.5 rebounds, 5 assists, and a tick over a steal a game, while shooting the 3 ball at 39%, feels like, and granted, it's a small sample size, feels like he's got a big career ahead of him. I think if you're a Wizards fan, taking him with the number 14 pick in last season's draft, you'd be absolutely, or this season, should I say, you'd absolutely be delighted by what you've seen so far from him. It's going to be a long season if you're a Wizards fan, but I think that's probably something you need to hinge your hopes on. Seeing how he develops, can't envision you'll get too many wins on the board, but just looking for the growth in him and Sarr, that's probably your best hope to taking anything out of this season. Guys, there you have it. I've ripped through all 15 teams in the Eastern Conference, quickly going through and giving a compliment to each of the respective teams, regardless of how good or bad their start to the season has been. As I said, it will be a 2-part series. Next week, I will tackle the Western Conference, which is, a lot of teams have started pretty well, so I don't think it'll be too hard to find compliments there. So certainly looking forward to tackling that one. As I said at the top of the show, would love to hear your thoughts. So what I got right here, what I got wrong. What's your compliment for all these respective teams? Hit up the socials, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok to let me know. Whilst tuning in, to be fair, I've been a little bit slack this week. But hoping next week to continue to ramp up those TikTok live daily recap videos. So go check them out as well. Till next week, though, guys, I will leave you at that. Really appreciate you tuning in, and I can't wait to speak to you all again next week. Till then, guys, remember, be good or be good at it. See ya.